We begin by creating a new work order. To do this, we go to Work Orders tab, select New, make sure that we are in the site that we want to do the work in. In this case, it is Merit. Click Next, and we will give it a name. We will call this Volume Day 1. Click Next. At this point, there is no design that we need to reference. Click Finish. If we are in the proper site, which we are, we can see that up here that is Merit. We can confirm that. We are now ready to do our initial topo. To do this, we go to the Measurements tab, Measure Surface. We are now ready to begin our measurements. We will want to walk the entire pile, ensuring that we get even distribution, focusing on the high spots and the low spots. Rule of thumb here is the more measurements you take, the more accurate the volumes will be. A good code would be ground shot, GS. We are now ready to begin walking the site, taking our shots. The default grid size is 30 feet. As I zoom extends here, you can see that as I move around, the screen is being painted to show that I'm having even coverage. Once we have all our surface points measured, we now need to encompass the site with a volume boundary. To do that, we'd come up to surface points at the top and select volume boundary. We can give it any name that we would like. In this case, we will call it outer boundary. So now up here at the top says volume boundary. We're now ready to measure the extents. Since this is our day 1, we want to make sure that we encompass the entire work area. You can see the red line is beginning to form as we move around the area. At this point, once we select exit and we have the entire area closed, it will ask us, do we want to close the loop? We always want to say yes to this option. We now have our stockpile or our area of interest initially topoed with the volume boundary defined. The next step will be to save this surface as a design that we can reference later. To do this, we go to Work Orders, Export Import Data, Save Surface as Design. We can now let the program form the boundary for us on this first day, and we also want to save the line work. We can give it a name. We'll call this Initial Topo. If we would like to, we could preview it. If we like the way it looks, we can go ahead and save it. We now have a design that we can reference later for doing volume comparisons. As we return to the site to check different areas of interest compared to our initial topo to get a volume of material removed, we would want to create a new work order. We will do that by going to the Work Orders menu, New. We need to make sure we're still in the proper site, which is still Merit, and we will call this one Day 2. It could also be today's date. We want to reference our initial topo. This will be the design that our new surface will be compared to. If that is the proper site, we can confirm that. We are now ready to move on to today's measurements. Like we did on day 1, we will have to both define a boundary and the surface. To do this, we go into Measurements, Measure Surface, and we will begin by measuring our volume for today. To do this, we go up to Surface Points and change that to Volume Boundary. Again, we have to give it a name. Outer is still okay. We are now ready to begin measuring the area of interest. We do not have to remeasure the entire surface. We can measure just the area where work has been done. Let's say that this far corner up here has had material removed out of it, and we would like to know the volume of material removed. So that's the only area that we need to measure. We will move up there and we'll begin defining our new boundary. Once we're ready to close the loop, we can come back up to volume boundary, switch over to surface points. It will ask us, do we want to close the loop? Once we say yes, it will connect our first and last point. We're now ready to begin measuring our new ground shots. This is the same process as before. We'll go through and begin doing all of our measurements. The more points we measure, the more defined the surface will be. Once we have all of our points measured, we can simply exit out of this screen. We are now ready to calculate the amount of material removed from our initial topo to today's topo. In order to do that, we will go to our volume and COGO function, and we will review and edit surface. If we do not know which icon to tap, we have a question mark up here that will tell us what each of these icons are. What we are wanting to do is compute volume, so we are looking for the cylinder with the question mark, which is right here. Once I click that, it's asking me which boundary do I want, or where's my area of interest. I can select that boundary that we measured for today. Click OK. We do want to measure to a design. If we know an expansion or shrinkage factor, we could add that. Once we click Next, this will tell us that we have removed 15,575 cubic yards. A fill volume would be material removed relative to our initial topo, and a cut volume would be material added. So think cut would be above initial topo, fill would be below. In this example, we have removed 15,575 cubic yards. We can click Finish. That will be saved into a report that could be pulled up at a later time. Our next step is to merge these two surfaces so that we have a new surface that is representative of the terrain today. To do this, we go to Work Orders, we go to Export Import Data, and we say Save Surface as Design. So we have to define the outer boundary. The problem with letting the software do it is if we do that, it will not allow us to merge the surfaces, and that's what we're going for. So in this case, we have to go with option number 1. Now we can zoom in on the area and simply tap that boundary. Pretty forgiving, and yes, we do want to close that line. We want to merge the surfaces, and we would like to save the line work. The boundary is now created. We can select that boundary. We could give it a new design, day 2 topo, or you could also use today's date. If you'd like to preview the new surface, select Preview. Our new surface, which includes our initial topo and today's work, is now going to be created. We can now click OK. We would do the same thing for day 3, day 4, always referencing the latest design for our new volumes.